Talk radio station.
This is the Business Breakfast on Dubai Eye 103.8.
With Richard Dean, Brandy Scott and Tom Urquhart.
Right. The World Government Summit, in their partnership and in collaboration with Kearney National Transformations Institute, have published their latest paper, 8 Transformations from Crisis to Opportunities. After years of increasing global volatility and deepening uncertainty, we now enter a period of intersecting crises and intensifying challenges. So, what can be done about it, and what are the crises facing government leaders, and how can they make positives out of said challenges? Questions, and not small questions, that we put to a man that has the answers, or certainly can point us in the right direction. Partner of the NTI, the National Transformations Institute at Kearney, Middle East, Rudolph Lohmeyer, joining us live here in the studio. Always lovely to see you, Rudolph. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning, my great pleasure.
Great to have you here, and thank you very much indeed for the weekend reading as well. It makes for a very interesting, not troubling read, because none of us are blind. We can all see that this is a world with challenges at the moment. And I suppose from the off, before we get into these 8 challenges, these 8 transformations as well, looking at it from a macro point of view, this is an opportunity for organisations like World Government Summit and yourselves and world leaders as well to look at some of the issues around and try and find the positives out of the negatives. Is that a way of putting it?
Exactly. In fact, I'd raise you one. It's about finding the logic of the negative, harnessing the logic to create the positive.
The paper identifies 8 strategic challenges that are not challenges that just one government or one world leader are facing. These are world challenges at the moment. Is the common theme that you can find opportunities from those challenges?
It is. The common theme really is that in each of them, the days when government had enough resources to just impose a solution on a problem, those days are gone. The fiscal resources of governments and the environment, the debt burdens that we see, that just doesn't work anymore. And so what we sought to do was to identify causally viable solutions by which the incentives and logics and systems related to the problem could be transmuted into a pathway for progress so that government leaders could viably take them on.
I'm going through it. We probably haven't got enough time to go through all 8 challenges, but it certainly seems that, and one word that really jumped off the page for me was unprecedented array, rather a phrase as well. Is it this sort of perfect storm of challenges across so many different metrics?
I think it really is, Tom. I have been doing strategic foresight work for 20 years, and those 20 years have seen tremendous change, but even on this fantastic show, I've had the chance to discuss them. We've never seen so many happening at once, from the geopolitical to the economic to the environmental to the cyber. And so the trouble with those, and these are 8 of them, there are others, of course, but the trouble of the intersection of them is that for citizens, for individuals, for young people, there's a really grave risk that they will fall into despair, resignation, that they'll give up on our collective ability to solve them. And that's why making causally viable solutions within the span of control of leaders we thought is so critical.
And especially in a year like this, that's why I found it so interesting with over half the world going to the polls this year, elections in 65 countries as well. It's a pivotal year in many, many ways. And you make a very valid point through the report, this collective losing of faith. Does my vote count, etc.? And yet, as you say, it does, because transformation can be made.
You are absolutely right. In fact, one of the 8, as you've seen, is precisely on polarization for that reason. A historic year of elections. In I believe it's 85% of the countries having election, which represent a huge swathe of the human population. Polarization is a clear issue. The rise of a new type of politics that we're all witnessing, that is deeply polarizing based on populism. And so one of the things we look at is how can that be undermined? And science has offered an answer. It's around rehumanizing the other. It turns out that at the root of polarization is this segregation of people, not just in their physical communities, increasingly digitally, online, as you know. And by overcoming that dehumanization, and scientists such as Jonathan Haidt and others, people at Stanford have done remarkable work, forgive my Stanford bias, that by showing people the humanity of the other, you weaken the forces of polarization.
As I mentioned, we are not going to do the 8 justice in the time that you and I have at the moment. But if you were, and this is a very unfair question, to sort of summarise the 8, how do you put it? What are the sort of transformations we're looking at?
Great. Thank you for the question. The sequence in which they appear is not in order of priority, but there is a narrative. So just quickly, I think I can do this slightly in a way that's not confusing. If we can't agree on what's true, it's going to be hard for us to solve anything in this world or in any country. So the first one really looks at this erosion of truth. And of course, I'm with experts and dear friends in the room. You understand this, that the algorithms that garner attention are actually reinforcing cycles of misinformation and disinformation. But again, the same technology, artificial intelligence and machine learning, that fuels those algorithms can be used to fuel truth. Pat Kondo, CEO of Seeker, this idea was seeded by him. I had a fantastic meeting with him in India. Journalistic standards, which you all follow, are known and documentable. Cognitive science has told us about our biases. By building transparent, open algorithms that give credibility scores to content that can be negotiated among government, that can be transparent, imagine a world in which all content got a credibility score, one that anyone could examine the sources of. This is now viable through technology. This is using the technology that's fueling the problem to create the solution. And if we do that, of course, it'll increase the likelihood that people will share and forward true, credible content versus misinformation. It'll turn that negative spiral into a positive one. It's a great example of the logic we're trying to have. We have comparable ideas structurally for how to address removing carbon from the atmosphere, how to address the huge crisis of cyber vulnerabilities and the market for those, and others.
Pathways of progress across the board as well. Are these pathways of progress that will convert as well? I mean, is this a blueprint for the way out of the sort of unprecedented challenges we're finding at the moment, or a guide?
Thank you. It is the seed of a blueprint. You know, we held ourselves to the standard. If we can't articulate the causal logic, it will not go in this study. So all of them has a causal logic that's viable. It would be the seed for either a national leader or a group of national leaders to activate it, but they all sort of have to pass that test. Health is another example. We have a health crisis. We have the diagnostic technology to identify the major things that limit human life and longevity. This is very much inspired by Peter Attia and Outlive, which I recommend to my brother and my sister and everybody listening. But how do we do this at a national or global scale? Well, by creating a new set of incentives for insurance, whereby early detection of the key markers of these are founded, and where preventative interventions are made, the economic benefit, the human benefit would be stunning, and it's doable. The technology's there.
30 seconds left with you, Rudolph. Takeaway for people reading this report.
We can do it. Human agency is the thing that we need to solve these problems. We're living in a renaissance of technology and tools. We just need to think carefully through what is driving the problem, what are the obstacles to it, and then what is the machinery of a solution. And in each of these 8 areas, the machinery's there. It needs political will and leadership, but we can solve these challenges.
Rudolph, lovely to see you this morning. Thanks so much indeed for your time. Rudolph Lohmeyer, partner, National Transformations Institute, Kearney, Middle East. Their latest report is out.
Your ARN